in 1948, I enlisted in the Army after spending 1 year at Rutgers University. And then I enlisted in the Army because there was a draft and I chose to enlist. And I was assigned to the military police. And in September of 1950, we were given orders to go to relieve a military police battalion in Yokohama, Japan. I went through Seattle, Washington to Fort Lewis and sailed across the Pacific, got to Yokohama, but they would not let us off. They told us that we were going to North Korea because the North Koreans had invaded, South Korea. So I was on a ship, did not get off in Yokohama, and I started there in the military police to help the evacuation of the military created by that. So that's how I was affiliated with it. And right now I'm on the board of directors of the Lancaster chapter of Korean War veterans. There are close to 100 of us, and it's the second largest Korean War veteran chapter in the United States. So I'm pretty active in that, have been in that, and I've been in the Chosin Reservoir evacuation. So that's a brief summary of how I got there and what I did not expect when I enlisted, but nevertheless, an experience that I'll never forget. The World War II draft was still on in 1947. I graduated from high school in 1947. And you had to enlist in the service. And you had an option of either being drafted for 18 months with 5 years of reserve responsibility when you were discharged, or you could enlist for 2 years and not have any reserve responsibility. So I chose to enlist for 2 years, which would have meant I would have been discharged in 1950, but that did not happen because the Korean War broke out and the President of the United States, Harry Truman, froze all the discharges. So on a 24-month enlistment, I served 39 months. The Korean War started, as you know, on June 25th, 1950. So I sailed out of Washington, Fort Lewis, Washington, in September of 1950, not knowing that I was going to go to Korea.
Right. So once you arrived in Korea, do you recall what exactly you saw?
Well, I saw a great deal. We got into the harbor. We were loaded with combat equipment. First of all, we stopped in Japan, in Kobe, Japan, around the southwestern side, and we picked up live ammunition, and we were assigned to go to North Korea. That's the first time we knew that we were going to go into combat. So what happened was we ended up over the side. The vessel was the Corporal Fred C. Ainsworth, was the Merchant Marine troop ship. We went over the side, across the side, and then down into Higgins boats, and we landed in North Korea, in Hungnam. And that's when we ended up going house to house, evacuating and going up to the Chosin Reservoir because the 1st Marine Division was surrounded by the Chinese. So we ended up going up there and we got cut off and evacuated, civilians and military. We were attached to the 1st Marine Division. They did not have military police. At least I didn't realize if they ever did or not, or still don't. But we were attached to the 1st Marine Division, and our 88th MP Company, 88th Military Police Company, was attached to the 10th Corps. The 10th Corps was headed by General Almond, and we went up into the trails up to North Korea and opened the roads with evacuating refugees, going house to house, taking civilians and having them march down from the Chosin Reservoir down to the Hungnam Harbor, which was a significant distance for a lot of those people. And we went to Ulsan, just up the harbor, And that's where we unloaded men, women, and children, but the vessels could not get to the beach. So what we did was we unloaded men, women, and children in cargo nets. There were tenders of small boats that pulled alongside of us. And we loaded men, women, and children, screaming, frightened at the time, in the cargo nets. And then those cargo nets put the people into these tenders, small motorboats, fishing boats, things of that nature. And that's how we evacuated the vessel.